Hi, I'm Julie Meyer. I'm the host of the FTE 2024, and I'm here with Daniel Doulton of Solar Suborbital. Daniel, thanks for coming to the FTE Winter 2024. It was good to have you with us.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
A number of people commented that they were impressed with your years of general management and the fact that you've done this so many times before. What's it like to go back out there and to set up another business? I mean, is this just a drug for you? You just love it so much. You're addicted to the whole thing.
I guess so. I think, to do what we do when we're building businesses, you've got to be attached to a vision that drives you. But critically, it's a vision that engages other people's energy as well. Mm-hmm. And the minute you have that, you're not alone. Mm-hmm. And the odds are in your favor that you can do something and deliver. And in our case, we hope we're going to deliver something that's both impactful as well as meaningful for the world and for us here, all of us here on the planet.
Well, a lot of people referred to that comment that you made about how you see yourself as the coach, not the boss, not the mentor, and so forth. Just remind me of what you said on stage, because a lot of people referred to it and they said that's what I aspire to be.
So basically there are three things that I learned, fortunately early on, about being a good leader. The first one is you need to hold the vision for everyone. That's your job. The second then is to manage the energy of the business, the team around you. But the third one, which is the one where I think many of us trip up, is you've got to remember that if you want a team that can own and deliver, you need to coach them, not manage them. Because by coaching, you empower people to do more than you would in simple functional boxes. And that's, for me, is when the magic happens in these high growth, high stress, difficult situations. The team come together as 1 + 1 = 3, and you can overcome odds that most people would have feigned at just on paper.
Well, I can remember a couple of yours, previous companies where that was absolutely the case, at least the ones that we worked on together in the UK, where I was able to be a part of your team. And I know that I remember those days. They were wonderful. Hold the vision, manage the energy, coach the team.
Coach, don't manage.
Yeah, I love that. And you're out in the Bay Area.
Yep.
But it's a global opportunity. You've got innovation in Spain. You're here in Zurich today. I mean, how have you chosen? Why Spain? Why Spain? How did that happen?
It's a good question. It's really to do with a bit of history, to be fair. It's because the previous generation, or the foundations of this platform we have at Solaris, was actually developed in Spain.
Interesting.
And the reason it was chosen is because it conspires that there are three ideal elements, if you like, that are there. First is meteorological for flight. Happens to be sunny, great weather. The second is airspace. We have dedicated airspace for testing and flying in military controlled area.
Wow.
And the third one is that the Spanish government, this is probably the most important, hence why these factors came together, is one of their 9 pillars of economic growth is aerospace, particularly new space. So there's a lot of grant money and support for innovative aerospace, and that comes in all forms, whether it's tax credits, grants, etc. So it's a really good environment for us to be developing in.
And you're bilingual, right? You're bilingual, so that helps. Yeah.
It helps.
The other thing that really struck me, and I of course knew it before, but this is a company which is a high velocity company, but you benefited from a kind of previous incarnation. So you've got the development years and funding, but really the development years of a company, double the age, or how would you put that in terms of where you are today?
I mean, yes, it's right. Not to say we're old timers, but the good thing is, so my co-founder, Andy Elson, he's got over 20 years building solar gliders. In fact, he's the only person I know of out there that's developed 3 generations of this platform, which are operational. Right. And I come from the other side and come from another, this is a stratospheric platform I learned the business of. And understanding, well, where's the product market fit, the solutions, the economics of it. And so when Andy and I came together, it was kind of like a fantastic marriage. He's got all the engineering experience you could want, and probably one of the only people in the world who truly understands everything about it. And there I was complementing it with the commercial capability. So we are not new in that sense. And we benefited that this current platform we have, it's had over 4 years of R&D behind it. So we're actually in the last mile. We're in the last run to product. Okay. And that's why we're so close to revenues and to scale.
Okay. And how do you see strategic partnerships this time around? And which are the ones, and do you got them in the bag that you can't release them, or are you still talking and so forth? How do you see that? Because it's so different from when we met 20 years ago. The game has moved on, and there's this kind of new common sense which is emerging now that the kind of empire strikes back, and is grabbing hold of the digital enablers and the high velocity private tech firms and so forth.
Yeah.
So how do you view that kind of David and Goliath battle or dance?
Well, I think, so one thing that's unique about what we're doing is we are data as a service, right? So although we fly our suborbital gliders into, suborbital space and gather data off sensors,
yes,
we process the data and we provide it as a simple service. So all you need is an IP connection. We can serve you anywhere in the world.
Wow.
The benefit of that is that we're a platform, consequently, between hardware, processing, third-party services that come in, which means we can create product and adapt to market conditions really quickly.
Yes.
And that gives us, the agility and unfair advantage at our scale to move and align with market as it unfolds.
Yes.
When you think of the different verticals we serve, the fantastic part is that we get to cookie cutter out the core capabilities, but adapt at the sensor end and the final piece of data processing. So the difference between, mapping and gathering data, say, for fire detection versus, mapping versus urban area stuff isn't as big as you think when you've got the agility. And so the systems approach to our design is critical. We're not just a flight platform company. We're not just a data processor. We're all of those things as a platform.
Interesting.
Between hardware, software, and services. And I think that's what gives us the unique advantage.
Now, the average business person listening to this might say, okay, right, I got that, and so forth, but where's this going to interact with my life? Wildfires.
That's an easy one to pick, yes.
Okay.
Wildfires, excuse the pun, are the burning topics that we experience in Europe, America, Australia, and increasingly in other parts of the world.
Yes.
It is a topic that has huge momentum for the simple fact that not only is it a massive destruction of natural resources, but the amount of carbon dioxide or carbon dioxide equivalent
precisely, you mentioned that
is staggering. If wildfires were a country, they would be the fourth largest CO2 emitter in the world, putting them behind the US, Russia, and China.
Wow.
It's just staggering.
Yeah.
So to be able to just address that on its own and try and mitigate wildfires by detecting them as fast as possible and reducing these wild outbreaks is one of the fastest ways of reversing some of the climate change that we're seeing, or at least controlling it, I should say. And so that's a huge motivator, and that's, I think, in an easy way to understand how everyone might see or feel the benefits of this.
Would you call yourself an AI entrepreneur, or an AI engineer, or an AI expert? How would you refer to, because you have for a very long time, I mean, I think of everything that you did that eventually became Siri and all of these, for a very long time, you've been pushing this envelope. So how does it feel, all of that, how do you refer to what you have been doing, and where do you think we are in the AI campaign onslaught?
Yeah. So first part of that, I certainly think I'm an AI entrepreneur because I've looked at the world with a background and understanding of AI and try to solve real problems with AI rather than get too much into the theory. So you're absolutely right. And I've had 3 big ventures in AI. This is my third, using space data with AI to help solve some critical problems in front of us. Where are we in the world of AI today? It's kind of funny because I'll never forget a conversation back when dates me when we went through .com, and in that era, people were saying, what's your HTML strategy? And, people are like, wow, it's the thing. You wouldn't say that today.
No.
So AI, in many ways, I just look at it very simplistically and say, look, it's the easy way to program at scale more efficiently than we've ever done before. But I think in 8 years' time, it will be as common as saying, oh, we've got Java or C++. It just is the next big wave of capability.
Now, you're based out in San Francisco, but it seems that sometimes when I call you, you're in London, you're here, and so forth. How much of time are you spending in Europe?
Probably about a third of my time at the moment, yeah.
Yep. And Solaris, suborbital, do you see that as becoming a standard? Is that even language is that important to you to be a de facto standard or a standard, or is that just not relevant here?
What's important, let me explain, is look, we're at the nascent stage of this market. So just to take a step back, suborbital space is the most unexploited bit of space we have. There's more going on in space with satellites and everything we've put up there, and we've had this big race to go there since the 50s, than there is in suborbital. It's been ignored. It's this sort of corridor that we transit through.
Right.
So consequently, one thing that I'm proud of is that by classifying it as suborbital space, people are beginning to understand the strategic value of it. Because it's like space, but it's so much more effective at delivering the goods. So for that, I'd say yes, there's an education point. And partly to a previous question you raised, I always believe, and I've always operated, that when you're an early stage of a market, it's not about competition, it's about cooperating and creating the ecosystem, because the ecosystem is where we all win, and we can deliver 100 times more and faster than if we all fight each other at the early stage. In fact, we risk actually cutting off our noses to spite our face.
There have been a couple of different ventures this time, from spectrum to batteries and so forth, where regulatory changes, either the problems were being solved, but the regulators were not even aware of it, and various things are going on. How much do you worry about CARE? How much are you aware of what the regulators are doing and how that could be some sort of left punch and knock you out of it? Is this relevant to your world?
It is relevant, but I think in our case, we're in a good place because there's good precedent. And let me explain when I say regulation. This is flight regulation, being able to fly through controlled airspace before we enter uncontrolled, i.e. space, which is not regulated in the same way. It's a very different world. In fact, technically unregulated where we are. But the good news is we're not the first people to fly unmanned aerial vehicles through controlled airspace. There's been 40, 50 years of development of this capability, most recently in the last 15 years. The second thing is the regulators are actually leaning in to try and support the correct and lightest version of regulation for us, because they can see the value of suborbital space. Right. So there are good forums in the world that are working on this problem. We've got NASA leading it in the States. Yes. Similar in Europe, we have people at ESA, etc., who are very proactively leaning into the right type of regulation that we need, which is for safety, but not the wrong type, which is commercial air traffic control, which is centralized, expensive, and slow. So it's coming.
Well, I want to touch on decentralized air traffic control in just a moment, if that exists. But for the amateurs here, space and gravity. Help me understand. Yeah. Where's gravity in the suborbital space?
Great question. So let me start by explaining orbital space, please, because we're the subspace below that. In orbital space, to stay up in orbit, you have to go fast enough so that you don't fall back into the Earth. So you're constantly falling around the planet. Okay, so gravity is obviously working on you. The difference up there is the only thing that keeps you up there is your speed. Yes. That's why satellites in the low Earth constellations, low Earth orbits, 400 to roughly 1,200 kilometers out, they're flying around at anything up to 17,500 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. Yeah, incredibly fast to stay in orbit. The big difference in suborbital space, which is at 20 kilometers, is that we can still use the top end of the Earth's atmosphere to maintain our flight. Okay. And critically, because we're inside the Earth's atmosphere, we also get to sit still. And that changes everything. So location, 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 in this case, is everything, because we can sit still and stare back over an area for weeks, months, ultimately years, right, and deliver video-grade data. And that is something you cannot do from space. Got it. So geospatially, you're fixed. We are fixed. And then, so you can loiter. That's correct. You can loiter. You can. With good intent. Okay. And that came up, didn't it? It was one of the questions that you had, and privacy, blurred objects. And people there, and it's easy to get the wrong end of the stick on this one. Look, we're mostly flying missions for big agencies or over very wide areas, maritime, forest, mountains. The resolutions we fly will always be within, the statutes. There are certain limits depending where you're on the world. Yes. But outside of that, again, I'm going to loosely call it's soft regulation. Yes. We're not at the street like Google Street Map, where they had a difficult task. But where there is any such thing, yes, we can obfuscate objects if they're too identifying to a location or a person. Okay. Lot of interest in backing you. You're open for taking other people in on the investment round. A little bit about how you see that fixed right now. Series A, pre-Series A. I'm being candid. Look, the markets in the last 18 months have been very risk off. So. Our positioning has been, look, we're a seed stage company at this point. Right. We haven't got revenues yet, although we have LOIs and a really good pipeline. Yep. We are raising at this point a minimum of 5 yes. In this round, and it can come in one of two ways. We've got a safe note that's currently that we've raised through private named individuals from Silicon Valley. So these are all A-star names, but it could go either way. We can either just continue the safe up or go into a price round. And the good news is our capitalization structure is very flexible at this stage, simply because we are matching where the market is rather than trying to say, this is what we want.
Excellent. Okay. Well, listen, Daniel, thank you for coming to the FTE again. It's just great to see you again. And it was interesting because we had a bit of a master class on Friday in terms of raising capital and so forth. And everybody just kept on referring to you as the entrepreneur who's scaling and hitting all the milestones and so forth. You've done this many times before, and you referred to this as your third AI startup, but it is about half a dozen companies that you built and scaled. And in 3 continents.
That's true. Yes.
In 3 continents. I think the one that really intrigued me. How did you get the backing of Amerigos into one of the businesses pre-funding revenue in and so forth? Was it a personal relationship? Was that a strategic selling?
No, it's strategic selling.
Yeah.
I wouldn't claim my strength of relationships are that powerful at that level, but I think that, maybe this is my gift in life. I'm very lucky that I can bring, the full stack of vision.
Yes.
Technical reality. I can actually show real solutions and talk technical turkey with people, but critically, I can also show real commercial application and value for things. And when you can get those balanced, it doesn't matter who you're talking to. You can develop a path to next stages and engagement.
You don't need to say, excuse me, thanks, good question, let me go talk to somebody. You understand the whole. Yeah. When did you know? How old were you when you realized it? That's the first. Was that right out of sign? When did you realize that you had a tremendous capacity to handle the whole conversation?
I think it was actually when I was quite young. I surprised my parents when I said to them, I want to go work for the Universal Invention Company. I think I was 8. And I'd figured out, my father worked in pharmaceuticals, and I'd briefly been, and he asked this, impossible question, how can you stir medicines without touching them? And I was like, well, that's easy. Use magnets and a metal piece inside,
Oh my gosh.
It was obvious to me. But at the same time, I was being brought up in multicultural. I was brought up in Latin America, speaking Spanish, Hungarian mother, father who came also from, mixed origins and moving around the world. So I was very lucky that the sort of complement of, I'm going to call it, technical skills with life skills was already being fostered at an early age. Right. And then when I was at school, I realized as well that I was a creative, but in the technical space. Right. And then I was very real world. I'd learned to stand on my own 2 feet from the age of 9. I'd get on planes and fly across from school in England to Uruguay, unaccompanied. So that was sort of in my makeup, but it had to be in my DNA somewhere, I think. And so when I went to university, I knew, and that's why I chose Imperial, that I wasn't just going to do engineering. I did an MBA at the same time,
wow,
knowing that it had to be something bigger and more connected and balanced between those 2 worlds. So yeah, it was there.
You're a great communicator, by which I mean you have great things to communicate as well as your delivery. But you are one of the most, you just manage the storm. You say manage the energy. You manage the energy, and you manage, there's so many entrepreneurs that throw off heat.
Yeah.
They do. They just throw off heat, and you manage that so well. And so we look forward to continuing the story of Solaris Suborbital. It was good to have you last year, this year. And thank you for coming to the FTE.
My pleasure. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you. This brings us to the end of our interview with Daniel Doulton, the CEO and founder of Solaris Suborbital at the FT Winter 2024.